Welcome back to the OpenAI Developer Certification course. In this lesson, we'll walk you through setting up your first TypeScript project. However, before we dive into the project setup, there's an additional resource to mention, which is there to help you throughout the course. This is the course's GitHub code repository. Each lesson has a corresponding branch in the repository for you to use and even integrate into your own solutions later on. While we'll guide you step by step through the examples in this course, the source code is there as a reference to support your learning. To know which branch corresponds to which lesson, we include the relevant branch for each lesson on the introduction slide. These branches follow a simple naming format, CH for chapter and EX for exercise. For example, the branch for Chapter 5, Lesson 2 is named ch5ex2, which represents the starting base code. Additionally, each branch has a corresponding completed version, which follows the same name, but with an underscore, finished, added to the name. This branch contains the completed source code for that lesson. For example, the branch for Chapter 5, Lesson 2, with the completed project is named ch5ex2_finished. Feel free to pull down and use the source code as needed. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get started with setting up our first TypeScript project. The steps shown will be a mix of terminal commands and working with the VS Code UI. While the node, npm, and tsc commands need to be run from the terminal, we will also be using the terminal command line to create new files and directories. However, there are multiple ways to create new files and directories using VS Code, and we can't show them all here, so be sure to use the method that you are most comfortable with, and the results will be the same. One quick note, for our demonstration, we will be creating a new project from scratch, so the folder we start from will be empty. Again, this is for our demonstration. With that said, let's get started. We'll start by looking at the two most common ways to start Visual Studio Code, from the terminal, and by simply opening VS Code via clicking on an icon or something similar. First, we'll demonstrate opening VS Code from the command line. Here, you'll navigate to the directory where you want to create the project. You'll notice in our example, we verified that we're in our projects directory with the pwd command, and then saw was an empty directory using the ls command. We then open a new VS Code window using the command code. Here, if your project already exists in this directory, in your VS Code window, you will see all your project files. Alternatively, you can open a new VS Code window from your desktop UI, and in the empty VS Code window, you will need to select the Open Folder button. Once you click this button, a pop-up will appear, and in the Explorer or Finder pop-up window, navigate to your project's directory. Again, this may be an empty folder, as shown here, or you can choose a folder which has an existing project. Regardless of which method you use, you should now have VS Code open and ready. Now that you have VS Code opened, let's start setting up our project in the VS Code terminal. Next, in your VS Code, you'll open a terminal by selecting Terminal option from the menu bar, and then selecting the New Terminal menu item. When you select the Terminal menu option, this will open a terminal at the bottom of your VS Code window. With the terminal now open, we will start setting up our project with the required files and directories. Let's start by initializing our Node project with npm. From the terminal prompt, we'll prepare our project with the base initialization needed for all Node projects. We set this up with the following npm command. npm init. When you run this command, you will be prompted to enter a number of fields. You can simply hit enter to accept the defaults for almost all the values with one very important exception. The exception is that you'll need to provide a new file name for the entry point. You will need to type in main.ts. This will change the project's default entry point from index.js to main.ts. This change is crucial because keeping the default index.js will cause the TypeScript code to not compile. With the entry point file name changed to main.ts, you can now hit enter to accept the rest of the defaults. When prompted with "Is this okay?" simply hit enter to confirm. That completes the initial Node project setup, and you should now see a package.json file in your project directory. Next, we'll set up our project with the necessary TypeScript configurations. This includes letting TypeScript know where our source files are located and where to place the compiled JavaScript code. We'll set up the TypeScript configuration by running the tsc command and passing the rootDir and outDir flags, which are the flags used to set the source and output directories. Let's now go ahead and set up the TypeScript configuration. We'll do this with the tsc command. The exact command you'll run is tsc:\init. This is followed by the source map flag, which is used for debugging. The source map flag is -sourcemap. And this is followed by the root directory flag, ~rootdir source. This tells TypeScript where your source files are located. Next, we identify where our transpiled JavaScript files should be placed after compiling our TypeScript files. This flag is ~outDir bin. When you hit enter, you will see informational data about your configuration appear in the terminal window. This somewhat long-winded tsc initialization command will create a tsconfig.json file in your project directory. With this command, you have completed setting up your project as a TypeScript project. Next, we will create our root and output directories along with our main TypeScript file. Since we determined our TypeScript root directory was the src directory and our output directory was the bin directory, we now need to create these two directories. To create new directories, in VS Code, you can either use the New Folder button or you can use the terminal. For our example, we will use the terminal and make use of the make directory command. To create the source and bin directories, which are our respective root and output directories, we will run the following command, make_dir src bin. This command will create the source and bin directories in your project's parent directory. Note that we abbreviate our source directory as simply src, but refer to it as source. Next, we will create the main TypeScript file, main.ts. We will create the main.ts file inside our source directory. For this, you can either use the VS Code New File button or run the touched command from the terminal. To use the New File button, just select the src folder and then click the New File button. It's important that the source directory is selected before you hit the New File button, as this will place the new file in the source directory. Follow this by naming your new file main.ts. Alternatively, if you're on a Mac or Linux box, you can use the touch command from the terminal. Here, from your project's root directory, you will type the following command, touch:/src/main.ts. This will create the main.ts file in your source directory. Whichever option you choose, you will now have a main.ts file in your src directory. Okay, now we need to make a single change to our package.json file. Go ahead and open the package.json file in VS Code. You will need to update the line, which lets the compiler know where to find the main entry point to your application. Here, instead of simply having the file name, we must also include the directory along with the main.ts file name. All we need to do for this is simply add ./rc/ before main.ts. This will direct Node to the correct entry point when you compile your project. Save the file after making this one change. Next, we'll add some simple test code and compile and run our project to verify our setup. Now that we have our project set up, your VS Code project should look similar to what is shown here. You should have a source directory with a main.ts file, an empty bin directory, a package.json, and tsconfig.json file. Now, go ahead and open the main.ts file and enter the following code, console.log, hello OpenAI API. Now save the main.ts file. Next, we will compile and run our application. From the terminal, type the following command, tsc. This command compiles your TypeScript code and will place the compiled JavaScript code into the bin directory. Again, from the terminal, go ahead and run your application by typing the following, node.bin/main. This command runs the application. Notice we explicitly told Node to run the main application located in the bin directory. Running your application, you should now see Hello OpenAI API logged in the terminal. Congratulations! You've successfully set up and run a TypeScript project in Visual Studio Code. Next, we'll start our OpenAI API development. We will write our first application to make a call to the OpenAI Chat API. Stay tuned, and let's continue enhancing our AI-powered applications together.